The Canada-U.S. trade war is on as Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs on Canadian products takes effect. The U.S. president has slapped a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, and Canada responded in kind, with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau saying Trump is trying to collapse the Canadian economy so it's easier to annex us. CTV's Mike LeCouture reports.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had a message for people on both sides of the border, and he spoke directly to the U.S. president.
Even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do.
Pulling no punches, the Prime Minister laid out the economic damage this will do to the continent. And he dismissed Trump's argument that this has anything to do with the flow of fentanyl into the U.S., calling it completely bogus.
So we actually have to fold back on the one thing he has said repeatedly, that what he wants is to see a total collapse of the Canadian economy, because that'll make it easier to annex us.
Vowing not to back down, Trudeau announced counter tariffs on $30 billion worth of American goods. In 3 weeks, another $125 billion worth of U.S. imports could also face levies. Governments across the country are also looking at non-tariff measures. Ontario is one of several provinces removing American alcohol from province-run liquor stores, and the Premier is willing to go even further.
If the Trump administration falls through on any more tariffs, we will immediately apply a 25% surcharge on the electricity we export. We will not hesitate to shut off their power as well.
Danielle Smith is also upset, but she's ruled out export tariffs on Alberta energy.
I've already said that we're not going to retaliate on energy. That is such an essential product for American consumers and American businesses.
Opposition leaders also stood firm against the U.S. trade action, but had their own suggestions for how Canada should help respond to help Canadians.
Counter tariffs must not be a cash cow for the government. Almost every penny of the tariffs collected should go to tax cuts, with a small sum set aside for targeted relief to workers hardest hit by the trade war.
I'm calling on an emergency session of Parliament like we had in the pandemic. What we're witnessing could be worse than the pandemic, and very likely will be worse.
The Prime Minister says instead of a relief package, the focus right now is to get American tariffs lifted as quickly as possible.
And we're insulted, and we're angry, but we're Canadian, which means we're going to stand up for each other. We're going to fight, and we're going to win.
But in order to get that win, Trudeau is calling for continued unity and for people to buy Canadian. Mike LeCouture, CTV News, Ottawa.
Premier Doug Ford outlined Ontario's response to the tariffs today. We've already heard that the LCBO has begun pulling all American booze. Ford also says he's canceling a $100 million contract with Elon Musk's Starlink, and he's ready to cut off electricity to the U.S. if necessary. Here's CTV's Siobhan Morris.
A stone-faced Doug Ford aimed to level with Ontarians.
Today's a tough day.
A day that the United States hit its neighbor and ally with tariffs. A day that began with the Premier explaining to American TV viewers,
we do have to retaliate, and I apologize to the American people. It's not you, it's your president.
At home, making the goal of that retaliation plan clear.
I want to inflict as much pain as we possibly can until we get to a deal of the USMCA.
It means pulling American-made booze from LCBO shelves, blocking bars, restaurants, and other retailers from being able to buy it, barring U.S. firms from bidding on provincial contracts, and terminating an internet deal with the company owned by Donald Trump loyalist Elon Musk, a move that may come with a penalty.
This is principle.
Ford has some choice words for Musk, who studied at Kingston's Queen's University in the 1990s.
They should be embarrassed that he went to Queen's. He should be embarrassed to attack the people that took care of him.
Ontario is ready to escalate if the Trump administration follows through with more tariffs.
We will immediately apply a 25% surcharge on the electricity we export.
Enough to power more than 1 million American homes and businesses. If tariffs stretch into April, Ford says he's ready to turn the supply off.
I'm highly recommending to President Trump, don't force our hand. You underestimate Canadians, you're making a massive mistake.
Warning Ontarians the road ahead may get rocky, Ford repeated a campaign promise to help.
We'll retrain impacted workers for new jobs. We'll retool companies for new customers and new markets. We'll reshore supply chains to bring good jobs back home.
The opposition leader is urging the Premier to recall the legislature to collaborate on a tariff response.
If the Premier is good to his word, which is he wants a Team Ontario approach, that means everybody at the table together.
Ford insists he doesn't need the legislature and it can't be called back right away after last week's election.
Our cabinet is active right now, and we can do whatever we need to do to protect the people of Ontario.
That was CTV's Siobhan Morris reporting. Well, of course, one of the most immediate and visible retaliatory measures for consumers is the removal of those U.S. products at the LCBO. Here's CTV's Allison Hurst with more on that part of the story.
Clearing shelves, boxing up all American products at LCBOs across the province.
Fight fire with fire.
Jason McCafferty rushed to pick up some bourbon, Bullet, and Maker's Mark, but he will be making a change.
Just stocking up before it's too late, but also at the same time picked up a Canadian version to see going forward, see how it tastes, and go from there.
All the product will be stored until tariffs come off, encouraging people to instead buy Canadian, as the Premier lobs a financial punch at the U.S.
We're the largest purchaser of bourbon in the world for Kentucky bourbon manufacturers. They're done, they're gone.
Most shoppers understand, but for some, it's hard to swallow.
I'll miss those California wines.
I think in the long run it won't accomplish much, but right now it seems to be the thing to do.
I believe in buying Ontario wine. There's some really good Ontario wines that people haven't discovered yet.
Choosing local options is exactly what the Ontario Restaurant, Hotel and Motel Association is recommending.
You know, these tariffs are a weapon to weaken our economy and our businesses and our livelihoods. And we should do our part in standing up for Ontario.
Not so easy when it comes to the tariffs on food.
Lettuce and tomatoes, potatoes and food safe packaging. Those are the things that we will really struggle with in terms of finding replacements. So we've asked for the government to look at exempting those from the second round of the retaliatory tariffs.
Omid Azad is feeling the pressure, having purchased cases of booze already on the menu at Beer Bistro and potential replacements.
We have to find the right choice for them, and then we have to at least 1 week, 2 weeks, the free samples to the guests to see that this is the right things for them. And it's all about increasing the cost.
He says some of the options are more expensive.
It's not fair that we pay for them.
A cost that will be felt until the tariffs come off.
That was CTV's Allison Hurst. The trade war between Canada and the United States will have a tremendous impact on the economy here in the Thunder Bay area, according to local business and industry leaders. But there's still confidence that companies are resilient enough to weather the storm. Justin Hardy has more.
I mean, it's a global interconnected economy, and this kind of rash behavior doesn't do anyone any good.
With the implementation of President Trump's tariffs and the retaliatory tariffs announced by the federal government, businesses throughout the region are bracing for the soon-to-be-felt impacts. Local companies have had roughly a month to plan for the tariffs after the United States put a pause on implementation earlier this year. Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce President Charlotte Robinson says this trade war will have tremendous impact on Canada's economy.
And specifically for Thunder Bay, we know that the products that we export, the majority of those products are forestry based, and so specifically our forestry sector will be very hard hit by these. Potentially there are job implications at the local level because of that.
Dueling tariffs between Canada and the United States is generally not good news for Northwestern Ontario's forestry sector. However, Laird Van Dam, the chair of the board of the Nguyen-Okima Forest Management Corporation, says that sector overall is quite resilient, especially as the industry has had to deal with the duties imposed by the U.S. on Canadian softwood for decades.
I'm a pathological optimist. Americans are going to buy the wood anyway, and they'll pay an extra price for it. They grow, of course. They have fine timberlands, good forests, good management. They have good mills, but ours are quite efficient. We have vast resources, and we also have trade routes to other countries, too, that they ought to think about.
We do know that particularly with wood, that our area produces a kind of wood that isn't available in the US, right? So it's a stronger type of wood, and so they do need that stronger wood. And so that certainly bodes well for us.
Despite confidence that industries in our local economy can withstand this trade war for as long as it takes, people are still hopeful that the Canadian and US governments will be able to work out an agreement soon. Justin Hardy, TBT News.
Ontario Provincial Police continue to investigate a fatal highway crash east of Terrace Bay. An SUV and a pickup truck collided around 6:30 yesterday evening. The passenger in the SUV, a 40-year-old woman from Hornpain, was pronounced dead at the scene. A Hornpain man driving the SUV and a Terrace Bay man driving the pickup were both transported to Thunder Bay Regional Hospital with serious injuries. There's no word yet on what caused the crash. The highway between Terrace Bay and Marathon reopened to traffic around 3 o'clock this morning. The future of Thunder Bay's democratic process dominated last night's meeting at City Hall as the Council Composition Committee presented an overview of its final recommendation. Council will now have a month to decide whether to stick with the status quo or make a change. Jessica Clement explains.
Chair Rebecca Johnson and Vice Chair Cody Fraser presented City Council with an overview of the committee's final report Wednesday night, which calls for a reduction of council from 13 to 11 members, with 1 mayor, 2 councillors elected at large, and 4 new wards with 2 councillors each.
We do know that the community overall was very interested in reducing the numbers of councillors. That was a given. No matter where we went, no matter where it came through the survey, et cetera, that was very clear. So we took that as a direction.
Johnson notes many residents think reducing the council size would cut costs, but she emphasizes there would not be any significant savings. Every councillor raised concerns about reducing the size of council, as well as the workload pressures, since wards will become significantly larger. At-large councillor Casey Atraney asked how the new model would accurately represent the population, since residents will only be able to vote 5 out of the 11 council members.
Which is then less than 50%. How is it fair that most of City Council won't be chosen by each voter? Does this reduce accountability and representation?
Fraser noted voting for 7 candidates could be a barrier for some people, claiming that having less options makes it easier for voters to be more informed about who they're voting for.
I in part reject the notion that it's less democratic or less representative to vote for less, when actually you're getting in my view, a heightened voice by picking candidates that you know well.
Things got heated when council heard deputations from members of the public. 2-time mayoral candidate Shane Judge, who has been vocal during committee and public meetings, urged council to reject the proposed model, accusing administration of influencing the committee's decision.
Most people responding wanted a council with a total of 9 members. Instead of listening to what the public had to say, the clerk's office, in my opinion, pushed its own agenda.
Should you have a complaint about administration, we have a staff code of conduct. You can make a complaint to the city manager. You are welcome to do so, sir. I am a person of integrity. My work is subject matter expertise. It was provided to support the committee. Thank you.
Council members will have 1 month to review the report and listen to public feedback before the committee comes back in April for a final decision. If approved, administration will have a short window to draw up a bylaw for council to ratify. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
The designated truck route that's been discussed for years at City Hall is coming back to Council this summer. Council members were presented with an overview of the route yesterday evening. Administration has been trying to find a way to divert heavy truck traffic off of Dawson Road and Arthur Street since 2017. The proposed route would redirect transports to the Trans-Canada Highway, through Kekabeka Falls, and down the Harbour Expressway. It would continue on to Main Street toward the Port of Thunder Bay, leading to the bulk fueling station on McKellar Island. City Operations Commissioner Kayla Dixon says they need to bring the DTR back to Council during this term.
We need them to make an informed decision. So the designated truck route we'd look to bring back to Council in June. At that time, if Council does support it, there's a process where the set fines need to be approved, and then we would expect the designated truck route would be enforceable in the fall.
A big announcement for Thunder Bay today at the Prospectors and Developers Conference in Toronto. Provincial and federal ministers joined the CEO of Frontier Lithium to each pledge about $120 million for the company, which recently bought the former OPG property on Mission Island. The funding will support Frontier's plans to construct Ontario's first lithium refinery there.
And today I am pleased to be here to announce two important additional steps. Firstly, I am pleased to announce that the federal government has conditionally approved funding of up to $120 million from the Strategic Innovation Fund for Frontier Lithium to establish a first-of-a-kind lithium refinery in Thunder Bay, Ontario.
And today, our government is pleased to welcome the proposal by Frontier Lithium, which is why the province is considering support for the project with more than $120 million, of course, Rick, subject to good negotiations.
Really feeling the support is really incredible. So we're truly thankful for Team Canada, Team Ontario. It's really a blessing. We just want to be here today and recognize it's something of strategic importance for the Thunder Bay region. It's indeed for Canada as a whole.
Thunder Bay Mayor Ken Boshkoff was also there and says this project is a big deal for the city. He notes the construction plus the wide range of employment opportunities will be a boon for Thunder Bay's economy for decades to come. The Ministry of Labour continues to investigate a roof collapse at the Dryden fiber pulp mill on Friday morning. Fortunately, no employees were injured, but the collapse forced the temporary shutdown of the mill's chemical plant. A ministry inspector issued 2 orders and 1 requirement to the owner, First Quality Enterprises. Company officials say a protection system was set up to enable pulp production to resume on Saturday, and permanent repair plans are being developed. Pre-construction work has begun for the regional hospital's long-awaited new cardiovascular surgery unit. Tom Jones Corporation won the $78.5 million contract in late December. One of the main parking lots was closed this past weekend to make room for the construction, but hospital officials insist there are still enough parking spots to accommodate staff and visitors. Jonathan Wilson has more.
The regional hospital recently posted on social media that the bare parking lot would be closed as of this past weekend. Crews with Tom Jones have already fenced off that parking area and are now mobilizing to begin the first stages of the cardiovascular surgery unit project. The big contract, valued at nearly $80 million, was quietly awarded on December 31st, but the full details were not posted online until Monday. The new 2-story addition on the hospital's west side will house a 76,000 square foot cardiac surgery wing. The project is expected to be completed in 2028. Hospital officials point out that an extra 207 parking spaces were added last year along Gulf Lakes Road in preparation for the construction. The closure of the bare lot and its 145 parking spots is described as temporary. Hospital officials say they'll continue to assess their parking capacity to ensure patient care services and the overall experience of hospital users is minimally impacted as they move forward with this important project over the next 3 years. Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
Several months after canceling the 2025 Folklore Festival, officials with the Thunder Bay Multicultural Association are explaining the decision. They cite rising costs and logistical challenges as the key factors. TBT News first reported the cancellation in December after sponsors received letters that the event, which had been planned for May 2nd and 3rd, wouldn't go ahead. The decision to cancel the iconic festival at Fort William Gardens came as a disappointment to many, and organizers say they're already looking to bring it back in 2026. But for now, organizer Janetti Juma says rising food and entertainment costs, along with increased security needs around the gardens, were the main reasons for the unfortunate decision.
We don't get any support from the City of Thunder Bay. We did try to apply for funding, but unfortunately we haven't been approved for funding for years, even though in the past we were. We weren't prepared to raise our costs. Folklore is a celebration that is affordable, family-friendly, and fully accessible. And you need to have something in our community that people and families can afford and seniors can afford to come. Life is not getting easier. We're not getting more money. Everyone can feel that right now.
Juma says one of the other challenges was the city's new Saturday parking fees, which she thinks could deter visitors. All right, let's turn our attention to the weather now. And Haley, we didn't see the sun much today, but we did have great temperatures once again above the freezing mark.
Yeah, not super sunny, but other than that, it was fairly similar to yesterday. We saw temperatures above the freezing mark once again, which is also above seasonal for this time of year. And our overnight low temperatures were not bad at all. We saw a low of -7 that we actually reached around 8 this morning. Wind chills only around -12, so not too bad. -12 is actually closer to what our low should be than what it actually was. So pretty comfortable. As for our high today, that was around between 1 and 2 o'clock this afternoon. We saw 3. Other than that, a little bit of wind from the north-northeast this afternoon. Now for the rest of the region to the west, there wasn't a lot of fluctuation temperature-wise. We see a lot of areas with -2, -3 right now. Red Lake's at -4, and they actually have seen some light snow since 9 this morning. Elsewhere, though, just saw periodic brief moments of some light snow. Those areas are Kenora, Sioux Lookout, and in Armstrong as well. Elsewhere, just mainly cloudy for the most part with a little bit of that north-northeast wind. Now, areas like Armstrong, like I mentioned, they did see a little bit of light snow, but very similar temperatures to the rest of the region. It's only the North Shore heading east that we really see temperatures start to get a little warmer. We see the freezing mark for Nipigon and Marathon. We see 4 in Wawa, but they're in an interesting situation. They actually have a winter storm warning because overnight into tomorrow, they could see 20 to 30 centimeters of snow. And in Sault Ste. Marie, you could see it's raining there now. It has been raining a lot today. They could see 20 to 35 millimeters of rain over the next day or so. So it will get interesting there for sure. As for Thunder Bay, we'll be very similar overnight as we were last night. It will get colder from here on out, and we're going to see a 30% chance of flurries this evening, leading to some periods of snow before morning, but nowhere near as snowy as Wawa. And our temperatures will get colder, but we won't be getting that rain that Sault Ste. Marie will be seeing. So really, at this point, it's kind of nice to have a little bit of colder temperatures with some sun to kind of balance things out.
All right, so some decent news there. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, well, when we return, we will get back to, well, really the only story here in Canada today. Of course, that is the trade war with the U.S. There's still plenty more to unpack. That's right after the break.
Our tariffs will remain in place until the U.S. tariffs are withdrawn, and not a moment sooner.